She said one more than your original data, and it was 2 decimal places, so I just did 3 decimal places.
Right. So the rounding rule works, like we talked about earlier, that you should round to 1 more decimal place than your original data is in. Usually we've been working with whole numbers, but now when we have our data is decimals, you should have more decimals.
So
Yeah.
just did 3 for all of them.
Yeah. So it's kind of more ideal. If you'd done 2 decimal places, that'd be fine. If you did 1, then you're going to be in trouble, though. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. One is going to be, it's going to be kind of, your data is going to be kind of messed up. Yeah. Okay, so there it is. Hopefully, I'm not sure how much we lost on the camera.
No, that was me last week, though.
Okay. All right.
Waiting for my sister to She flies in on Saturday.
So next we're going to take a look at proportions versus means. So how do you know you have a proportion versus a mean? A proportion will always have an experiment or survey where the answers are yes, no, or are, aren't, right? Not values. A mean, your data will be values. So a proportion will look like something like 14 out of 92, or it'll be a percentage. So either I give you the p-hat, the percentage right away, or I give you the number of yeses out of n people, and you have to find the p-hat on your own. How do you know you have a percentage? A percent sign after it. Nowhere is the words mean, average, or standard deviation. So your means will always have the words mean or average. It'll always have the word standard deviation, or it'll have x bar and s, right? Because x bar and s are the symbols for sample mean and standard deviation. Or it might be a list of numbers, which would be a mean in disguise, right? Because if I give you the data and your data's numbers, that's a mean. How do you know if it's a confidence interval or a hypothesis test? A confidence interval will always say estimate or confidence interval, the phrase confidence interval together. How do you remember those phrases? Because it's right on your yellow sheet, right here. Right? It's right there. Hypothesis tests will have words like test, claim, conclude. More importantly, it will never say estimate or confidence interval. It won't. How do you know if it's 1 sample or 2 samples? Try to find the actual word sample or selected or surveyed, right? And figure out, how many groups they sampled. How many times did they sample? Did they sample 2 groups or just 1 group? And that's kind of the easiest way I can say, kind of figure that out. Because sometimes we give you a statement, but it's not a sample, it's just a statement. So you got to kind of keep track of those, realize it's just a detractor, kind of a distraction in a sense. Okay. On exams, you need to give me all 5 steps. So at the beginning of the exam, I'll have in bold letters that I expect you to show me all steps, including drawing a picture. For the confidence intervals, I expect you to give me the margin of error. So here, those are the steps, which you all know. We've gone over them so many times. But I just want to make sure that everyone is clear that you will not get full credit if you do not show me all 5 steps for the hypothesis test. And you will not get full credit on the confidence interval if you don't give me the margin of error. Right? I need that also. Okay. All right, so now we're not going to solve these. I just want you to tell me whether it's a mean or a proportion, a z-table, t-table, confidence interval, or hypothesis test, and more on the yellow sheet you can find it. Why? Your exam is going to be 8 problems. Only 8 problems. Why? Because if I give you more than 8 problems, you will not have time to finish them. And as it is, we're pushing, it's going to take you more than 2 hours. I'm going to allow people more than 2 hours to take the test because it's a long test. So if you get a mean problem and you try to make it into a proportion and do a proportion stuff on it, then you've just flushed 2/3 of the points on that exam probably down the drain. You understand what I'm saying? And so it's really important. Or if you have a hypothesis test and then all of a sudden you give me the margin of error, right? And you be a confidence interval. Again, you're flushing points down the drain. So it's really important that you be able to know whether you have a mean or a proportion, whether you have a hypothesis test or a confidence interval, and you follow the correct steps. Right? And I would say at the end of your exam, double check and make sure that if it's a mean, that you've used the t-table. And if it's a proportion, you use the z-table. Because people will forget that. Like they'll just kind of, by mistake, they'll grab the wrong thing, even though they know they shouldn't. You know better, but you've just forgotten that for that second. So I would do that as part of your double checking at the end. Right, checking for accuracy and, what was that one? I can't remember, but checking for accuracy and precision. I'd probably throw that in there because that's a good double check at the end before you hand me your exam. Okay, great. So let's get a reader for this one. I know I had a bunch of people read already. Who was that? Lauren, you haven't read yet, have you?
I have.
You have. Darn it. Noor, have you read?
This whole set.
Nicole, have you read?
This whole.
Everybody has read. Everybody in the class has read today. Okay, so everyone's going to read. Zora?
No.
You haven't read. Great, Zora, go ahead and read.
The Medical Rehabilitation Education Foundation report that the average cost of rehabilitation for stroke victims is $24,672. To see if the average cost of rehabilitation is different at a particular hospital, researchers select a random sample of 35 stroke victims at the hospital and find that the average cost of their rehabilitation is $26,345 with a standard deviation of $3,251. Construct a 99% confidence interval for the true average cost of rehabilitation.
Great, thank you. Okay, so everyone take 10 seconds with your neighbors and figure out if it's a mean, proportion, Z or T, confidence interval, hypothesis test. Okay, is it a mean or a proportion? Which one is it?
Mean.
How do you know it's a mean?
Average.
Average. Should be standard deviation. Standard deviation. Good. Is it going to be a Z table or T table?
T-table.
T table. All right, then what's going to be your degrees of freedom then?
34.
Yep. So 35 people. So 34. Is it a hypothesis test or a confidence interval?
Confidence interval.
How do you know it's a confidence interval?
Successful.
Yeah, it literally says confidence interval. Good? Okay, so everybody put your finger on your yellow sheet in the correct quadrant, left or right, up or bottom, where you should find this. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna get you another one. Yep. Yep. Okay. All right. Next. Avery, read again.
Researchers conducted trials to investigate the effects of color on creativity. Subjects with a red background were asked to use creative use of words. Other subjects with a blue background were given the same task. Responses were given by a panel of judges. Construct a 98% confidence interval estimate for the difference between the mean creativity score for those with a red background and the mean creativity score for those with blue background.
Great. 10 seconds to neighbors. What is it?
So it's for mean interval. This is mean, so it's a mean. So you use the zero. And so it's going to be, yeah, so the confidence interval, what would you say? Yeah. I don't Okay, so what is it? Is it a mean or proportion? Mean.
How do you know?
It
It says mean, okay. It also has an X bar and an S. Everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be a Z table or T table?
T-table.
T table, degrees of freedom.
34.
Yeah, take the smaller end, subtract 1, 34. All right, is it a confidence interval or hypothesis test?
Confidence interval.
How do you know?
That's fun.
Literally says confidence interval. Good. All right, is it one sample or two samples?
Two
Yes, this is a two sample mean. It's independent. Is it independent or dependent?
Independent.
Independent, because I didn't give you a list of numbers that you have to subtract. Okay, everyone put your finger on the right spot. Pick the right row too. Good, good, good. Nope. Yes. Oh yeah, it's right there. Yeah, put the wrong one. Oh, there you go.
I know.
No, we will not have this problem on the test, but I want you to be able to identify what it is, that's all. So the problems on the exam will be the standard sort of ones. You'll have a regular confidence interval, single sample. You have for a mean. You have a regular confidence interval, single sample for a proportion. You'll have a find n problem. You'll have a hypothesis test, proportion, one proportion, hypothesis test, one mean, hypothesis test, two proportions, hypothesis test, two means independent, and hypothesis test, two means dependent.
So one of each?
Yeah, one of each. Okay. So this was the, let's see, it's the left side, and there's the top, correct? Next one, is this? Oh yeah, there it is. So okay, hold on, not that one, this one. Noor, good, read for me.
Researchers want to test a new anti-hunger weight loss pill. They have 10 people rate their hunger both before and after taking the pill. Does the pill do anything? Use alpha equals to 0.05.
Great, all right, 10 seconds with your neighbor. What kind of problem is it? All right, is it a mean or proportion? Mean. How do you know it's a mean? Yeah, because of the list of data. My data is a list of numbers. I gave you a whole list of data. So that's a mean. Is it a T table or Z table?
T-table.
T table. What's my degrees of freedom then? Yeah, there's 10 of them, so 9. Degrees of freedom is 9. Good. Is it a hypothesis test or confidence interval?
Hypothesis.
I think it's a hypothesis test.
Because it doesn't say confidence interval.
Because it doesn't say confidence interval or estimate. Does anyone see the word estimate here? No, it's not there. See the phrase confidence interval?
No.
Not there. And on top of that, there's a question. So a question usually means hypothesis test, but it can also mean, if there is the word confidence interval or estimate, then it could be one of those find n problems. Because those are find n problems too. Okay, Austin, read again.
The Gallup Crime Survey stated that 23% of gun owners are women. The researcher believes that in the area where he lives, less than 23% are women. He randomly selects a sample of 100 gun owners and finds that 11% of the gun owners are women. Test the claim at alpha equals 0.01.
Great. 10 seconds.
Yeah, sure did, but yeah.
Oh, I didn't do this. I didn't do this.
It's a proportion that has the first.
I didn't put it under the zero spot.
So that's means. And it's a hypothesis
Okay, which one is this? A mean or proportion?
Proportion.
How do you know?
That's because of all the percentages.
Because of the percentages? Okay, good. Also, no mean or average or standard deviation here anywhere. Is it going to be a Z table or T table? Z, easy peasy, Z table. So my degrees of freedom should be infinity. So just to help you kind of keep that in mind so that you don't accidentally grab the wrong degrees of infinity, right, even though it's a Z table. Is it a hypothesis test or confidence interval? How do you know? Yeah, there's a claim, there's alpha, there's no word confidence interval, or there's no phrase confidence interval or estimate. Good. So put your finger on the right spot.
Don't solve it.
Yep. Find it. Find it.
Oh, sorry.
All right. And then we did not do it for the last one. So find it for this one. Where are we looking? We're looking for this one. This is a mean T table. Hypothesis says, oh, how many samples is this?
It's two. No, it's one. It's one.
So it's sort of debate, right? So some people are saying, who says it's two, and what are you saying it is? Two what?
Like two samples of like before, like your hunger before and after.
Right, so it's a two sample dependent. So people were saying it's one, they're saying one because why?
It becomes one after you subtract the difference.
Right, so after you subtract them, it becomes one. I'm not going to ask you whether it's one sample or two sample on the exam. I just want to make sure that folks understand that you can look at it either way. So where is this a two sample dependent, which is sort of similar to one sample? Everyone show me where on the sheet you're going to point. Yep. It's a hypothesis test, right? Yep. 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 And yep. Okay, good. So that is the kind of the top, right? This one was the this is the bottom, right? And then this one. Drew, that's voluntary. Go ahead and read.
Example, overseas travel. Overseas travel, a researcher wishes to be 95% confident that her estimate of the true proportion of individuals who travel overseas is within 4% of the true proportion. Find the sample necessary if in a prior study, a sample of 200 people showed that 40 traveled overseas last year. If no estimate of the sample proportion is available, how large should the sample be?
Great. 10 seconds with your neighbors. What kind of problem is it?
Yeah. So it's a proportion. Oh, it's a proportion. So it is a Z table.
Okay, is it a mean or proportion?
Proportion.
How do you know?
Yeah, but
It says? Okay. Is it a Z table or T table? Z table. Easy peasy, proportion, Z table. So my degrees of freedom will be what? Infinity. Is it going to be a, is it a hypothesis test or confidence interval?
confidence interval.
I need a confidence interval.
Because it says it says confidence.
Right. Right, estimate. I would say the estimate. Okay, great. What kind of, but here's the special thing about it. What's the special thing about it?
Margin of error.
Yeah, it gives you the margin of error.
He was wrong though.
Yeah. It's, what'd you say?
You have to find
You
it.
have to find N. Find the sample size necessary. There's a question with this confidence interval. It's a find n. This is a find n problem. And this is a tricky one for folks. Even though we showed it last class, I won't show it again because, again, this is a tricky one. People kind of miss this one sometimes, right? So you got to look for that find n problem and try to keep track of it. If I say find the sample size necessary, find n. So everybody point to where on your spot specifically this will be. There's one particular little line that you should be looking at, pointing out. So find that particular line that you need for this type of problem. Proportion, confidence interval, where? Yep. Where exactly? Here. Yep. The exact line. What line specifically?
I would write down that one.
Yep. Yep. Lower. Yep. What line specifically? Yep. Yep. Okay, good. So where it says min sample size on your yellow sheet, so it'll be on the left side, on the lower part, but there's this little line right there that says min sample size. That's what you need. Or I'll show you on the sheet. That might be easier. It is right here. This is your find n. We have just a couple more of these. Kayla, if you're volunteering, go ahead and read.
A researcher wishes to see if average weights of newborn male infants are different from the average weight of newborn female infants. The mean weight is 7 pounds, 11 ounces, and the standard deviation of the sample is 8 ounces. She selects a random sample of 8 female infants and finds that the mean weight is 7 pounds, 4 ounces, and the standard deviation of the sample is 5 ounces. Can it be concluded at alpha equals 0.05 that the mean weight of males is different from the mean weight of the females? Assume that the variables are normally distributed.
Great. All right, so is this a mean or a proportion? Mean? How do you know it's a mean? It says mean, it says average. Standard deviation is in there somewhere as well. Standard deviation. Okay, so is it a Z table or T table? T table. What's my degrees of freedom? Sample of 10, sample of 8. Use the smaller n, so it's going to be 7. Okay, is this a hypothesis test or a confidence interval? How do you know that? Concluded? And also there's no word estimate or the phrase confidence interval. Okay, great. How many samples is it? 2. Okay, so it's a 2-sample mean test. Is this independent or dependent? Independent, because there's not little matched up pairs. Okay, everyone put your finger on the right spot. Finger on the right spot. All right, I'll come back to you guys. Good.
So I think this is like, hey, but make sure you confirm that same word. Because I would have not. There's like no law, like you double check, you have to go back. So like it'll end up with that.
upper right, row 2.
Me too. Drew.
Okay, last one. Samar, go ahead and read for me.
Lab problem 1, lawn weeds. A survey of 1,898 people found that 45% of the adults said that dandelions were the toughest weeds to control in their yards. Find the 95% confidence interval of the true proportion who said that dandelions were the toughest weeds to control in their yards.
Okay, 5 seconds, check it with the neighbors.
I think is that actually the end? Is it this one right here, this equation?
Alright, is this a mean or a proportion? Proportion. How do you know?
Percentage.
The percentage, okay. Is it a Z table or T table? Z table, so my degrees of freedom will be infinity. Is it a hypothesis test or a confidence interval? Confidence interval, how do you know? Because it says confidence interval. Okay, so how many samples? One. One. Oh, put your finger on the right spot. Oh, where did you put it in the center? What the heck? Where are you putting it? I think you're right in the smack dab of the line. Okay, great. Okay, so when we come back, we're going to be working on solving some problems. I would like you to do number 4 last. So do 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, and then come back to 4. In case we don't do it, but we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 28. So what is it, 26 now? So 16, 26 after. 10 minutes.